because it's one ticket. Vice President, President, there's no difference, one ticket. The value is the same. That is completely different from responsibilities of sector ministers. Are you saying that I should take responsibility for what happened in Ministry of Agriculture? Or let's say, what happened in the Sports Ministry? The fact of collective responsibility is not the same as individual accountability. Collective responsibility is not equal to individual accountability. The fact that you are all part of it, so now you are individually accountable for the omissions and acts and omissions of everybody in government. That would be ridiculous. So please, that's my answer to that. But secondly, and more importantly, I have proposed substantive reductions and abolition of taxes. So my sister from Onua FM made a very important inquiry. So if you are going to reduce all these taxes, how are you going to have the revenue? It's very simple. The amount of money from dealing with corruption alone can take us out of IMF. All the money is going into people's pockets. All the money is going to people's pockets. If you know the level of corruption, and it's not just about NPP, NDC, both of them, so we have no choice anyway to bring taxes down. We have no choice. I'm an economist and a lawyer, but I think like an engineer. So you start off from the point that you cannot have an enterprise economy or a competitive economy with high taxes. It's not going to help the private sector. And so when we talk about low taxes, and the GTP is saying that with the kind of tax regime that I'm proposing, Ghana will be the lowest tax regime in the whole of ECOWAS during an Alam presidency. So I've been very specific about that. All those taxes, how is it that we are still charging COVID-19 levy? Does it make sense? That you are charging disinfection levy. What are you disinfecting? Maybe you are disinfecting the country. But, so what are those taxes for? It's a lazy way of making up for failed policies in terms of making sure that leakages in our revenue regime does not occur. So all I can say is that there should be no excuses. Those taxes have no place in our economic environment, and that's why I've been bold to say that they should all go. And at any rate, if we have the chance of discussing the industrial revolution and transformation and the new agricultural revolution that I'm proposing, the GDP, you know where the revenue is going to come from. Because when you are dealing with an enterprise economy, the whole economy is driven by the private sector. So you are expanding the power and the reach of the private sector. And that is where you make money. And if you read the section on taxes, I'm saying that we have to re-engineer our tax structure. Right now, Ghana makes more tax revenue from indirect taxes than direct taxes. Indirect taxes, by definition, are taxes imposed, let's say, duties from the ports. So We have piled up so much duties and taxes on port operations because we feel that it is easy for us to collect money. Once you import, you have to pay. But it is the entry point. It is making our private sector uncompetitive. So we'll strip all those duties and taxes from the ports and let our private sector become competitive. If they become competitive and they make money, then they would like to contribute and pay taxes. And that's where you expand the tax base. So there's so many ideas about how we can expand our revenue base and not rely on the kind of taxes that we are currently relying on. So that's why I've been very bold to propose it. And at any rate, if you look at the GDP, in terms of budget deficit, in terms of our debt to GDP ratio, it's all very clear that this is going to be the most efficiently run economy if Alan becomes president. Then the next one is about, that's TV3 morning show, Commander. And I'm happy you brought this up because I've had the occasion to talk about this on various occasions. I'm surprised that the NDC has up to now not been held accountable and not been held to account for the fact that you go and borrow $32 million to build a factory. By the time the factory is finished and installed and is commissioned, 2-3 months after evaluation puts it not, the value at no more than $15 to $16 million. Can you imagine that? First time I stepped into the Ministry of Trade and Industry, knowing how controversial this Commander factory was, I decided that, look, I believe in continuity in government. So if the NDC has already gone through a process of loading this to a private sector, there's no problem. Let me invite that person to come and take over the factory. I don't need to start a new process because we want to bring in a new person. I invited the gentleman who won the bid. This was just 2 months before the NDC left office. 2 months before. Remember, the factory itself was commissioned when it was not fully operational. But that's by the way. And then at the same time, they made an effort, it went through a process of competitive bidding. The man who won the bid, when I invited him to come and take over the factory, he said, the amount of money that I bid for, it was just for bidding purposes. The factory does not deserve that amount of money you're asking for. So he said he's not going to pay. He's not interested in. Can you imagine giving an opportunity to somebody who has won a bid, a different party? He says he will not touch it. That is why we initiated another round of looking for investors. And everything went through Parliament, through Cabinet, every single thing. We went through Cabinet. All the people who bid for that, none of them put it more than $15 million. Bid for $35 million for the new one. Now, there was a Ghanaian who bid about $20 million for it. I called the person, come and take it. The man was running away. People were bidding $10 million for this. So I again called the transaction advisor. I said, what is happening? It beats my imagination. This is just 6 months after we have taken over power. What is this discrepancy? We borrowed 32 million. Now everybody is saying that it's not worth 32 million. So I said, you organize the first transaction valuation. So please do a check again. I know I cannot blame you because you are not valuers, but at least you commission people to value as part of the transaction exercise. So call another valuer. I won't take the business away from you because you are a reputable international organization. I know you do your job. So there's no problem. Let's not fight about it. Because NDC is making noise. After defrauding the country, they are still making noise about this. So I said, okay, let's call another valuer and let them value it. Then they said it will not cost more than $16 million. Then I realized that we are in trouble. And so, under normal circumstances, I ought to have abandoned the factory because it is almost like putting a certain white elephant along your path. Of course, at that time I was in the party, so an elephant, I said, oh, this is, we don't, at that time, say we don't deal with white elephants, so let's see whether we can do something for the community. So I again sent a proposal to cabinet for them to reevaluate this because we cannot leave it to rot. So then they agreed that we should, and I'm happy that the lady has actually done her homework. So I took it to cabinet, and all the people who bid for it, there was only one person who later on said that, look, he is going to take it up for a certain period. I think maybe 15 years or something like that. And he was going to pay a certain amount, 3 million, as you said. I took it to cabinet. Cabinet approved it. We're all very happy. As the lady said, we knew that if you consolidate the 3 million per annum, then you would still get your money back. Lo and behold, we got our lawyers. Then the man started running away. Now changing the goalposts. No, you have to guarantee me this. I cannot pay 3 million. I realized that it was not going to happen. So I went back to cabinet and I said, look, it demonstrates one thing, that there was some fraudulent work on this thing. So if we don't want it to rot, then let's find a management partner. Let's invite somebody to come and put it in good shape and then run it for some time until it becomes attractive to another investor. And then we can cut our losses. Because at other point it was. And we asked for a forensic audit on that, Yoko. So I'm using this opportunity to find out from Yoko, what have they been able to establish the difference between the figures? Because we have nothing to do. Our hands are clean. We have nothing to do with this. We did not borrow the money. We did not do the evaluation. So before I left, we got a management contractor who came and put it in good shape before I left. And we've even invited the president to see the process going on. So now I hear that my successor has now taken a decision, and he's right, because you cannot leave it to rot. So he is taking a decision that once the MPP government at my time was able to bring it back to life, and he has succeeded, then let us now lease the property. You see, because you should not expect the 3 million again, because nobody is ready to pay that amount of money, because the numbers don't add up. So that's the only explanation. That's the only explanation. Then, yes. So I think the decision that the minister has taken is right. They don't need to cancel it. they should give it for the lease, and if it's 1 million, they can. Now, government has to cut its losses because the numbers don't add up in the first place. And that is why the guy who promised to pay 3 million, when it was given to him, maybe he only said it because he thought that would make him win. But after that, it was obvious that he couldn't. He was running away from the project. Now, the next one was in respect of BRCs. Was that BRCs? No, reducing size of government. I think it was so from TV3. Reducing the size of government. And you wanted to find out why the Ministry of Information is not part of our list of 40 ministries. What does the Ministry of Information do? What does the Ministry of Information do? I'm not interested in a whole ministry talking about government projects and what does it do? You check all the matured economies. Have you had any matured economy with a Minister for Information? No. So it's a waste pipe. That ministry does not add anything. You know, I'm sorry, all my friends who are in the Ministry of Information, don't worry. I'll turn all of you into business people. You make more money than sitting in the, but because, you see, the reason why I'm very confident, I talk confidently about these matters, is because I've been around. In the early 80s, I was the leader of the team that did the first major restructuring of the Ministry of Information. I created the new structure of an Information Services Department, ISD. And I remember when I was with MDPI, at that time we were responsible for all the major government projects in terms of consulting assignments. And I remember it was Toby Kwachi who took over at a point in time as minister. And he always was commending me for the work that I did in the 80s, because when you do good work, the record is always there. My name is there. So I know what I'm talking about. You don't need a Ministry of Information. You can save a lot of money and use it to support our young people. Yes. That's the only reason why. Then Happy FM, BRCs. And I'm so pleased that you brought this up. You all remember the NDSSI, National Board for Small Scale Industries. When I took office, knowing what the NDSSI, the state in which it was, because remember, in 1990, I started the Empretec Ghana Foundation, which developed many of the high-performing Ghanaian companies in this country now, including Kasapreko. And I know Kasapreko is always proud if I mention his name. From where I took Kasapreko in the 90s to where they are now. Now, at that time, NDSSI, I was running this as a private sector project, sponsored by the UN. And NDSSI, our counterpart, was the government doing almost the same thing. So NDSSI has never really had the muscle to support companies. They've always been struggling. So as soon as I got the opportunity, I became minister under President Kufuor. I said that I'll transform NDSSI, and I created a new agency, the Ghana Enterprises Agency. And if you see what we've done with the GEA now, all the development partners are rushing to support a GEA, because now there's an institutional renewal exercise that has gone on. And as part of this, I was able to convince the African Development Bank and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, that if you're a development partner, yes, you are supporting us. At any rate, the money is not even a grant. In most cases, it's not a grant. So you have to feed into what I want to do as a minister. Normally, they don't like to listen and hear that kind of language. That you are telling them what they should do. They don't like it. Abu Sakara has been in this game for a long time. I've always insisted, any time I've been minister, I insist that development partners work within our own vision and framework. Initially, they are resistant, but they've always loved it. And so in this particular, both IFAD and ADB accepted that we will start building what we call business resource centers. Because I started working on this enterprise economy even when I was minister under President Kufuor. And so I said, look, if we need to develop entrepreneurs, you come out of school, you don't have a job. Does it make sense that you should continue without a job? So do something. But how do you start? You have to go somewhere where they can teach you the building blocks for owning your own business. So these are business resource centers. 67 of them. You see these business resource centers, you make me the next president of Ghana. State of the art. And I recruited people who are high performing from people in the private sector to come and manage these business resource centers. Being a minister and a politician, I could easily have said, oh, let's, just put civil servant. I said, no, it doesn't work like that. If you want to train an entrepreneur, it's not a civil servant that you use. Bring people from the private sector and let them come and do it. So I brought them in, and everybody saw the value of it, and all the development partners were so happy. They started replicating what I've done in other countries. And after the first year, I said, this should not be a burden on government. So let us bring private sector participation into these business resource centers so that government does not have any commitment. Government has built the infrastructure, but the people who run it, they should run it, make money, take part of it, and then pay themselves. So there's no commitment. And so I created a franchise arrangement. See, these are the business solutions for an enterprise sector. I said, look, yes, this business resource center, if you are a consultant in the private sector, you come, we give you a franchise like KFC and all these things, McDonald's. We give you a franchise. At the end of every year, you pay a franchise fee, and then government actually earns money. Are you getting me? Beautiful model. So we introduced that, and the people we brought in, they were bold enough to say that this is the way to go. And then they all signed franchise agreement with GA. Now, all of a sudden, what I hear is that government is now truncating the franchise agreement, illegally truncating the franchise agreement, and going to bring civil servants to run this again. Frankly, I can't even believe it. When you are saving government money from government now finding every month resources to pay people. So I'm no longer in government, but I want to use this opportunity to make an appeal to my brother, the current Minister for Trade and Industry. He shouldn't buy into that politics that is going on. you know, let them give that opportunity to those who can run it. Of course, put the right people who can run it as a franchise. You know, if somebody cannot run it as a franchise, you bring in another person. That is the way, not to now create an avenue for civil servants now to, can a civil servant train an entrepreneur? No. And why should government pay salaries to put somebody there who himself cannot run a business? It doesn't add up for me, you know. So if the problem is with the fact that some of them are not making money, that's fine. You can put in new people, but not to totally spoil that concept that is being heralded by the development partners who put money in there. They want to replicate it. Then now we are truncating it. So it's only advice. Now, very quickly, Metro TV, the behavioral cluster. Again, now I really have self-fulfillment. Today, what has happened with the media, the quality of questions they are putting, I've been listening to some of the other encounters. This is the first time that I've seen real substantive questions being put. So I'm overjoyed. Now I know that I really have a partner in development. But you have to make me president for it to the media, so we can work together. By the way, if you look at the GTP, I've also proposed that we'll create the civil society organizations as the fifth estate of the realm. If we have the executive, we have the judiciary, we have legislature, we have media, and we have CSOs. Ghana will rise again. And I agree with you, therefore, this behavioral cluster. You know, the clusters are not arranged in an order of importance. But even though it comes at the end, I agree with you that it's the foundation. Because without a change of the mindset, I think I made allusion to this in my opening remarks. Without a change in the mindset, you cannot deal with corruption. You cannot deal with maintenance of roads. You cannot deal with the environment. You cannot deal with galamsey. So many problems that we are having now is because of the wrong mentality. So I agree with you. But all the 5 clusters in the GTP, the economy, the governance, which includes the constitutional reforms and corruption, social services, infrastructure, and then environment and natural resource management, and then behavioral, they are interlocking. They reinforce each other. So they are independent but interrelated. So you are preaching to the converted. And I think that you cannot have progress with the other classes without the behavior. Last but not the least, on Dunso. In fact, I was amazed that the government was trying to defend itself that there was no Dunso. When it was obvious that we were having challenges. So changing the label does not change the status of our energy sector. But we've made, because of time, I cannot go into it, but we've made very specific proposals. The problem is not with generation. That's not the problem. In fact, at a point in time, and I'm sure it's still the case, that we have actually excess power. I've left government, I have to be sure whether that's still the case. We have excess power. The problem has to do with the public sector control of the energy institutions. Do you know how many agencies there are under the Ministry of Energy? That would be the first candidate for cutting. Energy Commission, Petroleum Commission, NPA, GNPC, BOST, ECG. So there's so much confusion because you have all these agencies falling over each other. And can you imagine, with my proposal, not just to cut the ministries. Cutting the ministries is only a small thing, but consolidating departments and agencies, consolidating them. The amount of savings we will make alone just from consolidating departments and agencies will pay for our IMF, what we need to pay for our creditors. So I feel that the proposals I've made with doing so, it is very clear. Put the private sector in charge of our energy sector, and most of these problems will be resolved. Put the private sector in charge. If you go to the US, maybe Pennsylvania has a power company and they do generation distribution. You go to California, they have, it's all private sector. If you bring private sector involvement into this, the dynamics will change. Efficiency, capital. Because why is it that we have all these intermittent power outages? Because of lack of investment in our transmission infrastructure. Government does not have the money. It would never have the money to rebuild our infrastructure. The only way is to bring in the private sector. They put in more money, they will bring in the efficiency, and then you regulate how much they can take in terms of charges. And that's what happens everywhere in the matured economies. Yes, thank you very much.
So, two quick announcements before the next set of questions. So, Everiva is one of them. Kafu is one of them. Mr. Speaker. Hello. And hello. So we have the 5. Okay. Then the last round, we'll also have 5. We ready to take off? Everybody, let's go. Strictly one question. Strictly one question.
Oh, one question, but
strictly one question.
A bit of clarity on a year, something like the question will be said, and I'll tie it in with the media. But I can't quote to nothing. Yes, you are.
Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. What is Ghana's latest position? And as well, reading from page 76, I'm really not satisfied with the provisions I see there. So if you can really expand it. And in relation to that, the European Union has equally, since 2020, December 1st, has passed regulations on deforestation. To a far extent, the EU Parliament is telling you that they are banning products from deforested areas. So your cocoa and the coffee you are producing by way of destroying your forest and your environment, those products, you cannot export them again once they are able to trace the source of those particular products. And this is the current state of our nation, where we are destroying our forest reserves, allowing people to mine within our forest zones with impunity. The question again is that what is your policy in tackling the menace of galamsey? Because I read from page 77 that you are going to abolish galamsey within 2 years. Tell us and tell the good people of Ghana how you intend to achieve that. Thank you.
I greet you all. My name is Kafui Day in GTV Breakfast. 4 quick questions. Galamsey, how do you change the color of the water of the pra, which is almost as bright as your color, within the time period that you specified on page 77, eliminating galamsey within 2 years? Will it change the color? That's number one. Number two, second question, I see that the Eastern region is going to be the science, research, and innovation hub for West Africa. Why? I want to know. Thirdly, you said it's going to be an enterprise economy. Are we going to now have our economy at the risk of being controlled by foreign interests who have the money? And the last one has to do with patriotism. It's on, I think it's page 81. If I do a test right now, most people cannot say the pledge and cannot sing the anthem. I had the privilege of speaking with an ambassador from one of the Latin American countries, and when she spoke about the love for her country, she was almost in tears. How do you get Ghanaians to love Ghana? Because if we don't love Ghana, all this will not work. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. My name is Nanaya Ofianko, and I host the Agenda Show on Atinka TV and the AM Drive on Atinka FM. And I'm taking my question from page number 45. And you talked about amending some articles where you indicated that you're going to abolish the Council of State. Will I be right to conclude that you do not see their relevance? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Salom Adun from City FM and Channel 1 Television. I must say that, let me also commend you on the cluster number 6 on behavioral and mindset change. I think, and I'm happy that you've identified it as the software to run our collective consciousness towards development and prosperity. My question really is on education. The objective is to implement a free education throughout, early child, basic, secondary as we have it now, and then tertiary. I've not seen cost, I've not seen the costing or funding for that. And also, just yesterday we heard that the NDC is planning or has proposed to do a tuition-free level 100 entry. They spoke about funding in some sense. I've not seen the funding in this one. I'll be happy to know how you fund that, even though I've seen you mention Get Fund and a few things in there. We'll need some more flesh to that. Also, it's a 4-year term or a 4-year term. When exactly in your 4-year term will you hope to make tertiary education free from level 100 to 400? As a corollary to that, I see free SHS as well. Very important program, but from what I have here, you have here, it does appear that you want a certain review or rethink around it. Which specific aspect of the free SHS will you want reviewed? And would that also include targeting the program so that those who can pay, and those who cannot pay, are assisted by the country, given our current economic position? Thank you.
So that's the third set of 5. We are aware that many of you are morning show people and therefore in a hurry. But enjoy this. Enjoy this.
Then I'll make it very quickly. First, Okateche, Article 289, and then the reference to Article 71, the amendments. I agree with you completely that there's a potential challenge in bringing this into existence because of the individuals who will be involved in making the proposals happen, because it affects them directly. But if you read it carefully, the challenge here, as we have, is ring fencing a certain number of officials and putting them under one category, whilst others are in different categories. That is really the challenge. My sense of the cry of Ghanaians about Article 71 holders is the fact that why are we ring fencing them from the others? That is my understanding. So when we talk about dealing with Article 71, we are saying that bring all those public sector officials, including those in the judiciary, as you rightly pointed out, to an independent emoluments commission. Now, our view is that instead of setting up an independent emoluments commission, try and strengthen the current Fair Wages Commission, and then bring everybody under that provision and that institutional framework. And then it will become much easier for us to do the comparative analysis of who should earn what. So you don't need to have these different categories. In and by itself is discriminatory. So if you have one institution which we are proposing as the Fair Wages, an empowered Fair Wages Commission to deal with all classes, then I don't think that there will be that violent disparity that Ghanaians are complaining of. So it doesn't matter that it will affect them or not. This is a proposal to ensure that we address these disparities. And the fact that they will go through a process, and I agree with you, they go through a process, but this is very simple. It doesn't matter whether they are involved or not. This is a proposal that will bring sanity and confluence to the determination of emoluments. So that's the way we are looking at it. Number two, you talked about, yes, Alan becomes president after 4 years if there has to be a continuation. How does it work out based on the GTP? It works out from the very concept of having a government of national unity and an independent presidential candidate. So the new political regime and dispensation that we are proposing guarantees continuity. Conceptually, it guarantees continuity, because if it's a government of national unity, in which all political parties are involved, in which different stakeholder groups are involved, the business community, the labor unions, farmers, traditional authorities, faith-based organizations, they are all involved, then the issue of continuity does not really arise. But if Alan becomes president as an independent candidate, it then consolidates this whole concept of an inclusive government. And so that the president is a president of Ghana, not of MPP of NDC. That is the transition that we need to get to. And then the continuation then becomes, I think, one of mainstreaming this whole concept, first of a government of national unity, and also selecting the president on the basis of his own merit and record. And Professor Kwesi Prempeh has written a beautiful article about independent candidates. It's a new political dispensation that Ghana has no choice but to transition to. Just across our borders, in Benin, 2 continuous terms when they've had independent candidates, you will not recognize Benin again. Because the man is there for Ghana and not for the parties. And Benin is moving. The most successful president of the United States, without any debate, George Washington, served 2 terms. In both terms, he was an independent candidate. And he actually warned about the negativity associated with duopolies. He warned at that time, if you read up on George Washington, this will be very clear. So, again, continuation of power is aligned to this whole concept of inclusiveness, a government of national unity, a government by the people, for the people, and of the people, headed by an independent candidate who is selected on his own merit. That's the way I see it. Then the long-term development plan also speaks to one of the fundamental pillars for the movement for change. Because what the movement for change is saying is that we have to move beyond party manifestos and develop a national plan. So this GTP is the foundation for a national development plan. This is a policy framework, and that's how a national development plan ought to start from. First, the policy framework, and then it goes into the next phase, which is implementation modalities for the policies. And then the third phase is the programming and the projects with the budgets. Then you have the complete national development plan. There's a lot of grammar, as the Nigerians would say, in our current national development plan. I mean, frankly, if you read what the GTP is recommending and read the national development plan, you see the difference. You know, this is solution-oriented. But if you read our national development plan, it's mixed up with analysis, with problems associated with sectors. By the time you get to what you really are recommending, you are already lost. So, in organization and management, the technical definition of a policy is that it is a guide to action. That's what a policy is. So once you get the, and that's why this is a framework. This is a policy framework. And then you elevate it to the modalities and to the budget. So you are preaching to the converted, except that the current understanding of what a national development plan should look like is different from what we are proposing. But we are aligned on one thing, that if Ghanaians will accept this GTP, it will go a very long way. And successive governments will basically continue with whatever previous governments would have left off. Kesben, the transition to electric vehicles. Again, I have to be careful about the statements I make. I want to confirm to you that this whole energy transition debate and discourse in the world has relevance to some economies, but not to a developing country. In many of our countries, do you know the contribution of developing countries in Africa in particular to the whole carbon debate? I think Africa contributes less than, what? Is it less than, definitely not even 5%, 3% or so, you know. So all the noise that people are making has nothing to do with Africa. The real culprits for carbon emissions has nothing to do with the developed economies. And so now, if we are talking about transition to, let's say, electric vehicles, and the suggestion is that we should abandon combustion engines, then we are not understanding the dynamics or the architecture of global power. This is our time. Africa, we have resources for oil and gas. We are going to exploit these resources responsibly. But that is what is going to feed into our economies. Do you know that it is the petrochemical industry, which is the adding value to oil and gas, that gives you fertilizers, that will give you bitumen, it will give you plastics. So I don't think that for a developing country, it is being suggested that we should not have an opportunity to develop some of these industries on the back of our natural resource. But this also does not mean that we don't believe in the new generation of power. Of course, Ghana, for example, we have started talking about nuclear energy and hydro energy. In fact, that is the way to go. Solar has a limitation, and this government keeps on talking about solar. Solar has a limitation in various areas. First, in terms of how we integrate that with our current transmission infrastructure, and also the capacity for solar extension, and even the cost. If you are looking for cheapest sources of energy, which is also green power, then it's hydro energy, and then nuclear energy. So I think that we have agreed in this country that we need an energy mix. And because we have an energy mix, this is not the time for us to abandon investments in fossil fuels. And so the assembly of vehicles is only for a transitional period. It's not that we will not also transition. Do you know how long it will take for all these countries themselves to transition? You check. Meanwhile, Africa would make the best use of our fossil fuels to power our combustion engines, and then we will transition at the appropriate time. We'll transition at the appropriate time, not dictated by what others are doing. Now, Galamsey, the GTP makes proposals on how to deal with Galamsey. It's very clear. You cannot wish away Galamsey, because if you go to the Galamsey mining areas, many of the young people who are involved in Galamsey, they are involved in Galamsey just like when you go to a farming community, others are farming. What is Galamsey? Galamsey is illegal mining. If you legalize it, it is no longer Galamsey. But the business model that the GTP is proposing is that these young men and women, they are already on the ground. They are not going to leave those sites now or in the future. So what the GTP is proposing is that we group these young people into corporate entities, not cooperatives, into well-structured corporate entities. Government provides seed funding for them to acquire the right equipment, modern equipment, provides working capital, not for free, but concessionary loans without collateral for these young people. These young people are going to be the owners of those companies. So because we are building an enterprise economy, all of a sudden, all these Galamsey boys now become owners of youth-owned mining companies. This is capital accumulation for our young people. And government is providing the support for this to happen. And government then also recruits the right expertise, managers, to help them manage these mining companies. And last but not the least, which is the real deal, is for them to have the right mining licenses. Because once you give them lease, mining lease, you give them the EPA licenses, it's no longer Galamsey. So it's a full package to deal with them. And so when I say within one year or 2 years, Alam becomes president, we start corporatizing them, we bring in the equipment. How long does this take? We make things look so complicated. How long does it take? So I'm very confident that it can be done, and it will be done. Then the next one is Kafui. I think part of what he was interested in also relates to Galamsey, change the color of the yellow waters. This is not Afro-Fanto waters, but it's the simplest of the challenges associated with Galamsey. This is basic technology. There's technology all over the world to reduce the turbidity of these rivers. And so it's just a question of technology. We can literally clean all these rivers with very little effort if we bring in the right technology. But you made a very important point about the proposal to make Eastern region the new research and technology hub. Part of what the GTP is proposing is that each region will become a center of excellence. So Central region becomes a tourism hub for West Africa. The Ahafo and Bono, two Bono regions, the three of them become the new tree-crop processing hub, including cashew, cocoa, and the rest. And then you have the 5 northern regions becoming the bread basket for West Africa. And then Ashanti region becomes the new industrial hub, manufacturing hub for Africa. The new industrial, Greater Kumasi Industrial City, 5,000 acres, is already under construction. And then research and innovation. If you go to the United States, Silicon Valley is acclaimed all over the world. It was specifically created. It's not as if there was something peculiar to them. It was a strategic development prioritization that they should develop Silicon Valley in that area. So it's the same thing with Eastern region. And And that's the reason why that is so. Oh, Greater Accra is the new international financial services center. We are going to create a tax haven and a new financial center in Accra, and you don't need to go to London, which is one of the financial capitals. You don't need to go to Zurich. You don't need to go to Hong Kong. You don't need to go to Singapore. The amount of money in Africa now will be consolidated in Ghana in this new financial service center. And that's when you have the big banks all coming to establish their corporate headquarters once Ghana becomes the international financial. This is something that has been discussed, but under an Alam presidency is going to happen. Volta region is going to be the skills hub. You see, if you audit the GTP, the 10 new strategic industries that we are proposing that will diversify the economy beyond cocoa, bauxite and aluminium, iron and steel, the component assembly, vehicle assembly, vegetable oils and fats, the manufacturing of machinery and equipment. You can't industrialize and import all the machines that you need. So under the GTP, we'll start manufacturing our own machinery and equipment. Germany, Austria, Turkey, Korea, that's what happens. So you need the skills base for the projects under the GTP to occur. And so that will be the center of excellence for skills development. It doesn't mean that you cannot have skills developed anywhere else. But when we talk about center of excellence, it means that the prioritization for Volta region is that one. So that's what we mean by. And then I think Kafui was also looking at whether an enterprise economy will not put the economy in the hands of foreigners. If, again, you read carefully the provisions in this, the most dominant theme is building indigenous private capital. Indigenous private capital. That is really the focus of this. And that's why there's so much emphasis on. There is no young person in Ghana under an Alam presidency who would say, I don't have a job. It's not going to happen. Because all the kinds of entry points for a young person to either get into self-employment or to have a formal job, it's all there. I've done this all over Africa. In the 90s, I think Wabi was talking about South Africa. When Mandela came out of prison and realized that he needed to be able to uplift the black people of South Africa, and the only way to do that was to build black businesses. 7 experts around the world, I was one of them that he invited. So if you go to Uganda, you go to all these countries, even Mauritius. I set up Enterprise Mauritius, and I'm still heralded in Mauritius. So why we cannot do that in Ghana is confounding. And that's why I think that we shouldn't be worried about the domination of. However, I must also add that you cannot optimize the accumulation of wealth without bringing in foreign capital, particularly if you don't want to borrow, because that's where the problem is. But when you bring in foreign investors, you must have a program of joint ventureship and collaboration between foreign companies and local companies. And the beauty of this is that we are preparing our local entrepreneurs and enterprises to become competitive enough to feed into the foreign companies. So everything is related to one another. Yes. Patriotism. I think I'm happy that the lady who talked about the fact that the anchor of Ghana's growth has to be the mindset cluster. And I'm happy you have introduced, or you are bringing to the fore, this issue of patriotism. In the 60s, if you traveled and you mentioned that you were a Ghanaian, you were very proud of it. Now all that is lost. All that is lost. And so the GTP is emphasizing the need for us to promote patriotism. But like you said, it's not a standalone thing. We have to infuse that in our educational curriculum. And I think there was a lady who also talked about critical thinking. Because, as I said, this is a policy framework. You may not have all the details, but I agree with you 100%. The new curriculum that we are looking at is curriculum that would ensure that the behavioral and mindset change will start with our educational curriculum. That's where it will start from. And also from our homes. Our homes and our schools. That's where the new behavioral mindset will come from. Kafu, is that okay? I think that's what, yeah. Then I think Council of State, you wanted to know whether by implication, I'm saying that the Council of State, what word did you use? Irrelevant. I have some of my uncles and my godfathers in the Council of State. I don't want to use this platform to say that they are irrelevant. But the Council of State, by the constitutional nature of it right now, is irrelevant. Not the people within it. Not the people within it. I'm saying by the constitutional nature of the Council of State right now, it is relevant. And so we have to transition that. All the good people who are currently in the Council of State, they should all now be rechanneled, to this new second chamber, which is going to be the real oversight over executive action. You can't have a president that has no limits. You're only building a thing God, and without any control. So Parliament, yes, has an oversight, but the oversight of Parliament as it is defined in the Constitution now is not optimal. And that's why you need a second chamber is also an additional oversight over executive action, so that we can limit the powers of the executive. That is where you have the real checks and balances. Once we get to that stage, Ghana will grow so rapidly, and Ghana will rise again. Then CTFM, you were interested in the proposals on free SHS and then other elements of our educational structure. Now, this GTP reinforces the constitutional aspiration of free basic education, where education now extends beyond primary, but it goes through the entire continuum. is the aspiration. The implementation of it, however, has to be defined in more detail. And that is why when you read about our approach to free SHS, we say categorically that the free SHS is a good policy and must be continued. But we need to be able to have an understanding, a comprehensive understanding of the implications of the free SHS. First, and I think it's useful that I just read this. It says that I wanted to read the exact 60 what?
Page 66.
66.
So it says,
Okay, you can read it.
to realize this objective, let me read the entire thing. Page 67. In respect of SHS, conduct a comprehensive review of the free SHS program with a view to improving its operationalization, particularly
that is the key. Repeat that.
with a view to improving its operationalization, particularly in respect of 1, financial sustainability.
Number 1.
2, infrastructural requirements.
Number 2.
3, curriculum development.
3.
4, capacity building for teachers and non-teaching staff.
4.
5, transitioning free SHS graduates to tertiary education and the world of work.
Good. So now you appreciate our views on free SHS. It will continue, but we will undertake a review along these lines. And after free SHS, every SHS graduate will now go into a 1-year compulsory internship or apprenticeship program. That is where the mindset is going to start changing after free SHS. You cannot just walk into university with this kind of mindset. The free SHS, let's be honest, is a good policy. But if you come out to act of free SHS now, you walk straight into the university and you work straight into the world of work. You are not fully baked. But after free SHS, there's a compulsory certificated program of internship. We are talking about how people in other economies seem to be so smart. Because by the time they get into university, they already are business people. And they understand the work of, the culture of working, even at that young age. So after your 1-year compulsory internship, you get into university. So there are 2 streams now. After 1 year of internship and apprenticeship, you may find that your real value and your destiny does not lie in continuing with university education, and that you may start branching. If you decide to branch, then you are getting into self-employment, and the BRCs are available for you to hold your hand, and you start becoming an entrepreneur right from the beginning. Now, with all the support that is guaranteed under the GDP, if you decide to continue through formal education, you go through the university. After university, you have 2 channels. One channel is you go into the military or the security services. You don't need protocol to get into security services. It is automatic. You have 2 channels after SHS. So If you have gone through the internship and you branch off into business, that is fine. If you continue, your mind is already opened up. But after university, you can either choose to go through the security services, or you start a new path in life, which is start your own business. And the program for start your own business has already been referred to in the. So it is not possible that you would leave. The value of going through the first channel is that the mental and mindset change would occur when you go through that security training. And if you go through the other channel, the other door, and you decide to go into self-employment or to work in formal employment, that reorientation would also be guaranteed there. So, under the GTP, there's a youth digital platform which is going to guarantee 3 million jobs within 1.5 years. 3 million jobs for the youth of Ghana. And it's the easiest thing that will happen. Because if you look at the projects envisaged under the GTP alone, it will be more than 3 million. However, we need to profile these 3 million people on a platform even ahead of 2025. So that those who want to get into the petrochemical industry, we already know where to channel the skills development. Those who want to go into industrial machinery and equipment manufacturing, they also understand. So that is going to be the real deal. And I'm using this opportunity. Very soon, the digital platform will be up. And I want all young people of Ghana to make an effort to come onto the platform. Coming onto the platform is a guarantee to you for a job within 1.5 years. When the government of national unity comes into power. Then the last one is, I think we've done that one. We've done that.
That was your last question.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, I have a dilemma. This is for the media. There are those who are behind the scenes politics, non-transparently, to try and see either they get onto the last block or we wind up. Should we continue with the last lot? Yes. So, there. George, you just came. Yeah. Mr. Youngson. There. Okay. So do I have 5? Do I have 5? George. Okay. Mr. Youngson, you start. Oh, you're on the phone. Finish off. So George, you can join. You're ready. So this is the last set. Bear with us and we'll wrap up.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kojo Youngson. I work for Joy. If I may add my voice to those who are commending you, Mr. Chairman, for this engagement, it's a very good idea. If anything could make it better, perhaps it would have been if we could have had it during the day. We're all journalists, so this is actually our day job. So if we had been invited to an event during the day, we would have found the time to be here and contribute. As it is, we're all working overtime now and getting very tired. In fact, my brain is so tired, I had to write down my question on my phone, just so I don't forget it. Bear with me. I have just one question, but just before I make it, before I ask it, I have to make a point just to establish the question, if I may. So you distinguish between individual responsibility and collective responsibility in answering. Thank you. Individual accountability and collective responsibility when you were answering an earlier question. But I think you have proved that as a person you believe in collective responsibility, because not once, but on a number of occasions when you have disagreed with what a group you are associated with is doing, you've withdrawn from that group. Either you've resigned or you've walked away. So I know you believe in collective responsibility, which means it is fair for us here to ask you questions about the performance of the government that you were a part of. So if I may, let me ask my question. It's about Galamsey. Now, page 77 of your document says that you will eliminate Galamsey in 2 years by enforcing existing laws. It sounds familiar because the current president put his presidency on the line and said he would eliminate Galamsey. Meanwhile, you were part of his cabinet when 500 excavators disappeared. Several others were burnt in violation of our laws. You didn't resign. You were in cabinet when your Asante regional chairman's company was caught red-handed mining illegally in forest reserves. Your boss exonerated him by saying they were not mining as we speak. You didn't resign. You were with them when laws were passed to allow mining in these same forest reserves. You didn't resign. You were part of a government that could not regularize small-scale mining, in spite of setting up committees to do exactly that. Nobody was held to account for these failures, and you didn't resign. But you tell us now that you will solve Galamsey in 2 years by enforcing the same laws that the government you were a part of could not enforce. Why should we trust that these aren't just words and that you are actually capable of doing this? Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nenel Domple, and I represent all the Gen Zs, which is the popular generation, and I can find that none of them are here, so I represent them. Yeah, I'm a Gen Z. Okay, so growing up, I ran and owned a blog, the 1957 News, which is a digital news blog, yeah. So growing up, I grew up to President Atta Mills as a president, and we're told he's a calm Asundwehene. So during his time, when people do bad things, he called them to order by speaking to them calmly. President Mahama came into power, and we had a popular term, babies with sharp teeth, which means that the young people in his government were holding him to ransom. They were doing things he couldn't call them to order. Now, we're told there was another man who was coming, who was a very radical person, who could call his people to order and make them do the right thing, which is His Excellency the President. You are also described as one fine man who is very calm. I'm saying this because in President Akufo-Addo's time, we see how the state is supposedly being captured by people, and they are taking our lands, they are sharing things among themselves. As a fine gentleman, as a man who is very calm, how are you going to hold your appointees to order, even when the man who is described as a very radical person is not able to do that?
My name is Sifa Dankwa, and I am the host for the Happy Morning Show. Mekatri, it's as a Masay Misani Bako Miansa. Oh, me try to tell. Program Yavene show so. To me, try to tell. Chief, Madama, Dedikai, Yaka Enterprise Economy. Meaning, you are chief proponent for after. I ain't found a share in the enterprise economy. The autonomy has got to do with Galamsey You know, say and sasi bebre no na wo man mu a asay. Do you look at reclaiming those lands? Emre ahe eni ebe here to reclaim those lands. Eka he eni ebebo ewo ho. Eno eye de etoso eye mienu. De etoso miensa ya advocacy. Many mental health authority for wedding come from 2012 IBC Sabri. And Pempi na some more can say woman yesika emfa ni wo mujuma wo mudie. Ofa economic cluster no a o kire se obeyi etuo bi e de free ho. Etuo ba ko abeyi free ho no e COVID-19 levy. This year May na ye mental health month. Many of share bi wa many of din komo. Asem ba ko mo kan say senka ye betumi asesa nia ye de COVID-19 levy no eyo nanka ye de ama mental health authority a nke betumi aboa obeye hu bibia na medase.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Osejenfi, TV Africa Morning Show. I will refer you to page 49 of the GTP, Constitutional Reforms. You've listed 13 areas that you're proposing to reform when you're giving the nod to serve as the next president of Ghana. I mean, interestingly, I didn't find one area that many of the predecessors have argued on the term of office. You do not talk about it in this proposal. Does that mean that 4 years in 2 terms is enough for you to achieve everything in this GTP? And how much can you achieve in 4 years? Also, a quick follow-up to what Kojo asked. On you serving in this government, many voters voted for you when you campaigned for this government and then you left eventually. Will you take the responsibility to apologize for the disappointment that you have also talked about and how you've led some people to also vote for this government? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hon. Justin Vinay is the name. I work with Pan African Television. Justin Vinay, yes, please. Your key producer, if I may put it that way. Honorable, I just want to find out. I know, if nothing at all, you've been listening or you've watched the proposals from both parties, the major political parties that we have in this country, NPP and then NDC. I know just only yesterday, if nothing at all, you've listened to what John Dramani Mahama, His Excellency, has been sharing with the general public. I just want to know from you, personally, do you think you have a way to pave through these two political parties, NPP and the NDC? Because when you look at the general public, their focus is towards the NPP and the NDC. That's the political parties they know. Do you think Movement for Change has its own way to pave through these two political parties? Thank you very much.
Excellent questions, set of questions throughout. Koyo Yangson, my nephew, I think the concept of collective responsibility and then individual accountability not being the same actually answers your question. I believe in collective responsibility, but not individual accountability. So all I'm saying is that, yes, being part of the government, together we are collectively responsible. However, when it comes to accountability, then it cannot be generalized. So exactly as you said, if we promised to deal with Galamsey by destroying equipment by doing ABCD. That was the business model that was adopted. I cannot be held responsible for the efficiency or effectiveness of that model. However, I am saying that I'll have a different business model, which is what I have proposed. And by implication, I'm saying that destroying equipment and talking about these other ways of dealing with Galamsey was never going to be sustainable. And that's why it has not worked. So what I'm saying is that dealing with the realities, and I've already alluded to it, that there are people on the ground. And in this particular case, although, as you rightly pointed out, promises were made that they would be given licenses and things. In this particular case, the business model based on the enterprise economy framework is that build their capacity by making sure that you give them the right equipment, you give them the right skills, you give them the working capital, and then on the back of that, you give them the license. So it's not, my model is different from just giving them the license. It's making sure that you build their capacity, and then on top of that, you give them the license. So there are two different things. That is the model they adopted. It has not worked. I believe that my model will work. Because remember, I've done the same thing under the One District, One Factory program. I was able to bring together groups of young people in communities, 45, 50 in a community. And then I got the 1D1F to provide seed money for them to buy modern equipment for maize processing, depending on the comparative advantage of the district in which they are. So the fiscal infrastructure is built, the factory is built, the equipment is provided. It's not free money, but it's concessionary funding, and it's all facilitated. They don't need collateral, they don't need anything. And then, in addition to that, we engage management experts to support them. So out of the 58 companies that we incubated with young people, 22 already have their machinery and their facilities installed, and the rest will be installed soon. So it's just transferring the same model to the mining sector. So I know it will work. And then I think that above all, it's also a question of the fact that these young people, whichever way it is, they also deserve to be assisted. And I think that the business model I'm proposing will make sure that they succeed. Then, did you ask any other question? It was just on this one. Okay. Then Gen Z, if I remember what you said, I think your worry was that, how do I hold my appointees accountable? Because I look so calm. Do you speak Twi? President Kufuor once said, one who said, in social after the Prada, and so you know, to wit, when people get drowned, they only get drowned in cold water, not in hot water. So I'm a calm but very firm person. And that is my style. I don't need to change my style. And I've been very successful as a person. At the age of 22, I was a manager in the leading corporate entity in Ghana, 22 years. So if I was calm and not firm, I wouldn't have survived through the vagaries of the corporate world. And everybody in Unilever, which is UAC at that time, knew I was one of the high-performing executives, even as a young person. So my record is clear everywhere. Anybody who works with me know that you can't play around with me. Everybody knows that. But I know how to deal with people. I know how to bring people up. All the people, young people who are now celebrated, many of them, I brought them up. It just comes to memory, unfortunately, John Kumar. I gave John Kumar the first job. I gave John Kumar the first job. He was my political assistant. And some of the people who are making noise in NPP now, I don't want to mention names. I brought them up. And if you will be grateful, they should be celebrating me now. Yes, so I'm calm, but behind that facade, I'm more streetwise than you can think. Yes. But the point is that my beautiful wife is making a positive, yes, the witness is here. You cannot mess around with me. It's as simple as that. Everybody who works with me is aware of that. Yes, so now I think that was your only concern, Gen Z. Is that correct? Oh, okay. Then after, again, my brother, Happy FM. I'm very happy that you brought in after. You know, I started talking about building an enterprise economy and changing the structure of the Ghanaian economy when I was at the School of Economics in the early 70s at Legon. My dissertation for my undergrad was changing the structure of the Ghanaian economy, the transformation. This is in the 70s. So I've been talking about transformation, about production, about industrialization, about agricultural transformation since the 70s. And I've been leading this path of an enterprise economy, not only in Ghana, throughout Africa. So I live and talk and I act along those lines. Now, in line with that same principle, I was also the chief engineer and the chief architect for the African Continental Free Trade Area. Because I know if you produce, you have to sell. And because of the trade barriers that we have in Africa, selling into Europe, United States, and other regions, I knew that the only way my concept of an enterprise economy in Africa would work is to create our own single market. And that is why I led the process to have the AFCFTA. And I also led the process of Ghana becoming the headquarters of the AFCFTA. So everything reinforces each other. The AFCFTA is going to be the anchor for the enterprise economy, because you are going to produce, you are going to export, and after provides that opportunity. So that's where after fits in. And I think you talked about Galamsey. If you read the GTP, it says that the new mining companies owned by the young people now would also be given additional resources for developing the lands that are reclaimed, and now developing cash crops like oil palm and other cash crops on the reclaimed land. So everything has been taken care of in terms of the the Galamsey and its impact on the environment, reclaiming land. And last but not the least, your proposal that we should divert the proceeds from the COVID-19 levy to support mental health. Is that mental health? Yes. Now, the only point of departure that I would have with you is that the COVID-19 levy no longer has a place in our tax structure. So it must go. But it does not mean that we should not find sources of supporting mental health delivery. And if you read the health section under the GTP, it is very clear that we will mainstream mental health in all health facilities in Ghana. Currently, it's being done, but only for some health facilities. I'm talking about mainstreaming that in all health facilities. And also, I know this was mental health, but just as an addition, we are also going to mainstream the use of herbal medicine throughout all our health delivery institutions. And there will be an authority created alongside the Ghana Health Service, which will deal specifically with traditional medicine. So basically, yes, the COVID-19 levy should go. We will find the resources to support mental health delivery. And last but not the least, no, I think one more. TV Africa, term of office. I need to make reference to page 45 of the GTP, Roman 6. The proposal is to extend the term of office from 4 years to 5 years. And I've already made that proposal. And you are asking whether I would apologize on behalf of the people of Ghana who voted for MPP. Was that the question? Sorry? Oh, people voted for MPP because of me. Oh, I apologize to those people. Now vote for Alan to become president. It's not all lost. You voted for MPP because of me. But now MPP has disappointed all of us. So now bring your own person into power and then you will not be disappointed. But this leads us on to the last comment on how are we going to break through this monopoly of the NDC and MPP. I want to use this opportunity to tell you that the majority of Ghanaians have made up their mind that they don't want either MPP or the NDC. I'm sure most of you are aware of that. The unfortunate thing is that many of them seem to be suggesting that maybe they will not vote at all. But that is also no good for our democracy. So what they are hoping is that Alan will say firmly that he's going to contest. That's all they are waiting for, because they've made it clear that they want a change. They are looking for an alternative. And they are hoping that Alan will make it clear. I'm making it clear today that Alan is going to contest to become the next president of the Republic of Ghana. And all the propaganda going round by some people within the MPP and those without, saying that Alan is going to go back to the MPP has no basis and no foundation. What is the basis of that? I'm contesting as an independent candidate who is going to bring the first government of national unity into being. So what is this talk about? Oh, they are trying to convince him to go to MPP. So let me clarify that once and for all. Alan is going to contest as a presidential candidate on his own merit. And I want this to be clarified. But to seal this matter, I've come from within MPP as a founding partner. I can tell you that MPP does not have more than 1 million committed registered voters. 1 million, they don't have it. All this talk about they have 47, 45, NDC has 45, they don't have any 45. They don't have it. The only reason why in the long run, when it comes to general election, they have either 6 million, 6.5, 6 million, is because the people of Ghana have no alternative. So when it comes to election, then they have to choose between one of them. That is how the numbers come up. But I can tell you that they don't have more than 1 million registered committed voters. All of them are waiting for the right alternative. And to validate what I'm saying, 2020, there were 17 million registered voters. 10 million of the 17 were aged between 18 and 35. Hello? 10 million out of the 17 million people who were registered voters in 2020 are aged between 18 to 35. These are the group of people who have lost faith in our democracy because the NDC and the NPP have not delivered any dividend to them. And these 10 million people, they are there. What would be the basis for them now to have confidence in either NPP or NDC? Does it make sense that after 32 years in power, these are 18 to 35. Some of them have finished school, 5 years, they don't have a job. And meanwhile, the NDC and NPP have not been able to convince them that they can do anything different. So the 10 million people are waiting for Alan to make a declaration that he's actually going to stand. And I'm standing because of the young people of this country. I've made it clear. It is a youth-led movement. It is a youth-led movement. I've already committed to the fact that 60% of my appointments, not ministers, all appointments will be between whatever, 22 to 45 years, or let's say 50 years. I've already made that commitment, and it's going to happen. My vice president will be a young person. And it will be clear, because me, I'm only a transition candidate. You see, the wisdom and the capacity and the grace that God has given me to serve President Kufuor and make him a celebrated president, that same wisdom and capacity and knowledge he has given me to make a difference in President Kufuor's government is the same grace that the Lord is providing to me to be able to lead Ghana. And so, for me, you watch what is going to happen. Because people are going around confusing people. Alan, he's a fine gentleman. He's a right person. But they will say that it's either NDC or NPP. It is not either NPP or NDC. It is not either NPP. Now the game is over. for the MPP and NDC. The game is over. The majority of the people know that there is nothing new that the MPP or NDC can offer. Right now, can you imagine that a new political organization, a new candidate contesting for president, has come out with a substantive, not manifesto, a plan that we are discussing. Two parties that have been in power, they are now struggling with their manifestos. And frankly, a lot of the things that I've been hearing them say, it's all a repackaging of what is in the GTP. Many of the things they are talking about, just repackaging what the GTP has said. And I say these things in all modesty, but don't let them confuse you. The majority of the people who are going to select the next president, they've made the decision that it is not NDC, it is not MPP. And so, have faith and deliver Alan. Ghana will rise again. So thank you very much. And that's also to thank you so profoundly. I'm so very much impressed. It's unfortunate that none of you made reference to some of the ideas in the GTP about media, about the media. But I want to assure you, you know, there are three pillars of media work. First is to inform, educate, and then entertain. And the media can make or make this country just by the first pillar, just information. If you are able to disseminate and explain to the people of Ghana what the GTP offers, Ghana will rise again. Just from information, and once you inform, you are also educating. And when prosperity comes, then it's entertainment. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. We'll take that as closing remarks. But two fundamental things have been said here, which will suffice for closing remarks. That the vice president is going to be young. Those people who told me that they are going to dye their hair, do affidavit, be careful. The affidavit people, be careful, because we will vet you. So on that note, we are very grateful. It's been a fantastic time. I believe I speak for all of us when I say it's been very, very interesting, very useful, very interactive. Now, there's a cocktail served downstairs by the pool. Please help yourself.